All right, battlers, today we've got a brand new meta discussion. This is the Sorcerous Cup, the cup for the month of June, brought to us by the Silph Arena. We've got a wonderful set of panelists here. Lyndon Ryu, Season 2 Elite Trainer in the Silph Arena. Matt DiFiore, a local tournament organizer and incredible player. We also have Shiny Hunter Ben, Season 2 Elite Trainer as well. And then our special guest, probably the most experienced Great League battler in the entire world. She's got over 10,000 Great League wins. This is For The Battles. Let's get into it. For the month of June, the Silph Arena Cup is the Sorcerous Cup. Now, coming from last month's Forest Cup, the Silph Arena team did a lot of work to try to differentiate this cup in terms of not making it a rock, paper, scissors kind of meta. They wanted something with a lot of maybe soft counters. There are only maybe 2 or 3 areas of super effective damage across the entire meta. So you're not going to get a lot of Galvantula into Mantine, just kind of these RPS matchups that really just can determine the whole match. So I wanted to ask our panelists here. We've got a lot of great people, as I introduced just a few moments ago. Whoever would like to take this first topic, if you'd just like to talk about maybe the meta overall and how they developed it and how it compares to Forest. I know we've got maybe a couple of weeks of practice, so whatever insights you'd like to offer in terms of the Sorcerous Cup meta.
Sure, I'll go ahead and start. With Forest, it was a lot like Rainbow 1.0. We had the fire, grass, water, electric, just very hard, like you said, very hard counters on hard counters. And there were definitely a few ways to break that meta, like Trash Rumor Dam is one of them, like few safe swap options that you could break the RPS, but it was very hard, especially if the teams had a specific thing. But with Sorceress, it like you said, they went away from the RPS meta. There's a lot of almost everything here has some hard hitting move to its supposed counter, and then a lot of other things here are just neutral, and there's a lot of opportunity for farming and a lot of really good safe swap options, which are just not really hard countered by much of anything. So yeah, I definitely think we're going to be seeing maybe less frustration and maybe more strategies that break away from the typical of what we're used to with this, and I'm excited for it.
I would generally agree. The one PSA I would give is it can be very tempting, at least I found in early practice, to go with the Confusion Fighter Dark line, and that's an easy trap to fall into. And would just recommend you don't run the Confusion Fighter Dark line unless you're willing to make a hard read of what your opponent is going to bring.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's very balanced when just from my early practice. But you do have that triangle, and then you have Pokemon that extend from that as well. Like your Noctowls and your Alolan Sand Slashes, and plenty of balance here that, I think really smart players are going to be able to build really solid teams, well-rounded teams, and be able to handle quite a bit in the meta.
I'd add too that, there's 5 typings with this cup. And so in turn, that kind of makes a lot of different eligible Pokemon. And you'll see a lot of kind of old favorites that maybe don't show up on the core graphic. Like when I kind of talk about the diagram of how they attack. But, a lot of normal types are kind of just unique in there. A lot of unique ice types, like you just mentioned with A-Slash. Even Sealeo is kind of interesting. So, you can find the Pokemon that you like that maybe doesn't fit into the regular attack and potentially build a really interesting team off of that.
In terms of typings in the Sorcerous Cup, as Lyndon just mentioned, there are 5 unique typings, and there are a lot of notable exclusions that I found when browsing through the meta. For example, there's no fire, there's not a single dragon-type Pokemon. As we saw with the Forest Cup last month, your only dragon was Kingdra. You don't even have an option like that. There's no electric type either. So a lot of these Pokemon that I see really dominate the meta. Things like Alolan Muck was ranked number 1 when the cup was first announced, and now Froslass Froslass is number 1 as well. These typical counters to Alolan Mud, things like ground type users, Mud Slappers, Mud Bombs from things like Whiscash or a Stunfisk, it's not there. And then when you look at things like Froslass, you don't have a fire type to really counter that ice type Pokemon. What are your thoughts on the typing balance here? I think we only have maybe 2 options, maybe 2.5 options at Fighter with Medicham, Toxicroak, and some crazy people try to run Wobbuffet. I've practiced with it a little bit, and it is pretty entertaining. But in terms of those notable exclusions, does that kind of shape the meta in your opinion?
I don't
Alakazam.
think okay.
Alakazam. Sorry, Ben.
Alakazam. Nice.
As a cardinal sin, forgive me. I need to remember Alakazam.
I was gonna say, I don't think types really have all that much to do with it here. Even the fighters, like, they don't take out all of the steals. Like, and they don't take out all of the normals in different situations. And it's just nothing about this meta is black and white, because it's gonna be based so much on like energy and team composition, I guess, and a little bit of mind games.
I think that brings up a great point, though, which in turn means that you really have to be familiar with the matchups of the individual Pokemon that you're playing, and then the matchups of those Pokemon against the meta. Because, again, it's not just so simple as all poisons lose to Psychic, or all fairies lose to poison, and kind of move through it like that. You really have to understand the specific matchups and really think through it, and then understand too, like you just said, with energy, am I going to live with enough energy to be able to attack something else when it comes in, or should I just kind of let my health fall lower? So again, the matchups are very intricate in this I've seen so far.
Very little to nothing is walled here, except for like a Toxicroak into a Hypno or a Bronzong, but almost anything else, there's play. It's going to be a lot about strategy and setting yourself up for opportunities after lost leads to come back from that with energy play and shield management.
The hardest thing with this cup for me has been like making a team that's not weak to charm, because there's like 3 steals, and then there's like poisons, and like half the good poisons are all like part dark, and they don't do well against charm either. So it's like, how do you build a team that can be balanced but like also doesn't get wrecked by charm completely?
Does it become triple charmer? Like, kind of triple dragon was a thing back in, what was that? Was it Timeless when that was the thing?
Timeless, yeah.
So what if it becomes
that would actually be pretty rough.
Triple dragon was a pain in the butt, man. That was awful.
Yeah,
but like, how would you stop a triple charmer team?
I'm
like,
trying to think how I would stop a triple charmer team with only one Bronzong.
Oh, did I just come up with something? Sounds like
gosh. Okay, maybe I'll be doing some tournaments this month.
It's just like
tap.
Seriously though, when you look at the meta, like, there's not a lot
No,
of
but
hard
seriously
targets.
though, how do you stop 3 charmers? Like, but seriously,
This is a real question.
How?
Because they
If the la-
they
if
consume.
One of them is Gramble with charm, or Snarl, you could like even hit the Bronzong. Like, how do you do it?
Because they consume shields.
Yeah.
The heavy fast move strategy is fine, but you're often playing a delicate shield game, and the fast move user often uses 1 or 2 shields. And if you're running 2 on a line, you're basically using your shields primarily for those. And if you're trying to run 3 on a team, they're going to take up all your shields. And if your supporting teammates don't have the bulk around them, you're not going to necessarily do well. This is a lesson I learned the hard way in Rose, where instead of Charm, I tried to run a Bite Drapion and raise early Vileplume. And this is where I became very conscious of how slow I am on switches.
Yeah.
Is where Vileplume in particular was very, very sensitive to how many fast moves you allowed the other player to get in. As just a little bit of an energy allowed them to get that next charge move off that forced you to either double shield or just let your Pokemon go. Similarly, that means in a meta where you have a lot of neutral matchups such as Sorceress, you could find yourself in a position where you could be forced into a corner because it's largely neutral. Charm hits hard, but it's going to be hitting neutral for a lot of Pokemon where because of the energy advantage of your opponent, you could be forced into a double shield situation that you don't want to necessarily be in. And because those heavy fast move users tend to consume shields, they tend to be relatively easy to bait. because you're relying on the fast move. Even if it's like a Toxicroak against a Wigglytuff, you can build up to the Sludge Bomb pretty confidently and easily bait with the Mud Bomb, and then switch out and be at a shield advantage for the rest of the game.
It's interesting as well because there's some flexibility with the movesets. If you look at something like Alolan Muck, I know just about 98% of people are going to run Snarl on it, but if you bring in Alolan Muck and maybe a dark heavy team and you're trying to kind of lure the Charmers out and you put Poison Jab on your Alolan Muck, you can fight most Charmers to a stalemate, which is an interesting thing.
I think Poison Jab has a lot of merit here. It's going to be not as good of a safe swap, which is probably its best function here. But a lot of teams are also very weak to Azu, I've noticed. And
with grass being optional.
It's very hard to want to run grass here. Yeah. And so Azu, it brings the question, like, also, what moves do you want to run on Azu? Because sometimes you're only going to have one Azu counter besides Azu. So Poison Jab Muck, I think is, coming back to that, is, I think, like
Alolan Muck.
Poison Jab, Alolan Muck.
And
Yeah,
it
not
sacrifices the mirror, right?
Correct.
Yeah, the Poison Jab Muck will lose to the Snarl Muck just because of the faster energy generation. Yeah.
The other thing that sticks out about this meta, just from early practice and research, it doesn't have the stress or the super effective damage that was involved in Sinister. But the similarity is you have to have a real good understanding of board position when a bait will or will not succeed, as that can turn or flip an entire game.
Yeah, I agree. With Sinister, there were just so many ghosts running around. A Shadow Ball would just devastate you. But even in these matchups like a Froslass versus a Alolan Muck, Froslass can hit just as hard with the Avalanche as Muck hits with the Dark Pulse. It's really like two Titans kind of trading blows, and there's not like just a one-shot opportunity in most cases.
Azu landing a Hydro Pump against most of the meta is a pretty big blow to that team.
Yeah, I like Hydro Pump on Azu. Like, if you're not particularly like weak to Azu, I think Ice Beam Hydro Pump is better. If you are weak to Azu, then Play Rough it looks very tempting. Guys,
I do want to bring this up because I thought I was onto some secret strategy that was just gonna blow everybody away and it was just gonna be really, really great. And I clicked through the Sims repeatedly and I was like, man, how did nobody see this? And I actually messaged Ben about it and I said, Ben, I've got a Pokemon. And it's going to crush Skuntank, it's going to crush Toxicroak, it's going to destroy Alolan Muck, it's going to kill Bronzong as well, and it's just going to do it all with fast moves. And I said, can you guess what it is? And this was back when...
Claydol?
Yeah, this is Claydol with Mud Slap. And this is back when the ratings first came out, and then Kakuna updated them to include Mud Slap as the fast move, and I felt like my whole strategy was gone. You know, I was like, because people will come in with the Bronzong, and you go in with the Claydol, and you know the Bulldoze isn't going to do that much damage. The Psyshock isn't going to hurt that much. It just seemed like a really great pick. And I do want to mention this as well. I was expecting a lot of poison users, but looking at early tournaments, I see a lot of maybe Alolan Muck seems to be almost ubiquitous. There's also a lot of Skuntank and maybe some Toxicroak, but outside of that, and Mud Slap just doesn't feel like it would be as devastating because of the lack of poison types. Do you have any thoughts on maybe like early meta versus what it's evolved into already?
I can comment. I think from the early meta, I think Froslass is going to be absolutely huge here because it's really hard to deal with an energy gain. So I think Azu is going to be almost crucial on every team, just from what I've seen here with Froslass being such a big player. I mean, it's number one in the rankings for a reason, and I've seen a lot of teams with it. So I think Azu is going to be. Oh, Froslass being one.
Yeah, I'm very, very surprised with that. Like,
It's so good.
I know Froslass is good at it. I'm like, I love Froslass. I'm surprised it's number one. Like,
but look at the counters. Like, the hardest counter in this cup is Dunsparce. Nobody's going to use Dunsparce.
It's true. It's true. I guess it doesn't really have. I mean, Azu is probably
well. That's why I mentioned Alakazam
up there too.
Because I mean, Alakazam's like it's in the top 10 for its counter, or it's like 12.
Yeah. And who's gonna run that?
I mean, Pocket Midget swept the tournament.
Jim Cornwell.
No, Pocket Midget swept the tournament today with
nice.
Alakazam.
Oh, I love it.
So I don't know, but you see like Charmers like delete it, so there's another reason to run Charmers. I mean, other than that, you got like the Licky family and Munchlax that are there, but like there aren't a ton of hard counters for it at all.
Razor Leafers also usually do decently well.
Using grass in this cup though.
Yeah, they're very hard to run Razor Leafers here.
I would agree. Don't get me wrong.
Guys, I tried to bring a Venusaur to a practice battle against Linden, and it was like suicide. It just felt like the worst idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Linoon's a decent counter to Froslass too, if you're looking for like something that has play for other things in the meta too. I mean, I'm running Linoon. I love Linoon. In my opinion, I think it's great in this meta.
I think Linoon has a place here for sure.
No doubt. I mean, it breaks up Azu and Hypno, and it has play against Froslass, so I love Linoon.
My personal thoughts are the reason that Froslass is so good is just because Avalanche goes pretty much unresisted against most things except for like Azu or other waters or ice. Yeah, I mean, Froslass seems very interesting so far. And to be honest, at first I wasn't too interested in it. It's kind of how glassy it is. And again, I think this cup's about shield management, but then at the same time, it's about energy management too. So Froslass with strong energy play just can be so unwieldy for a team to have to deal with. I don't think anything really wants two avalanches, except for maybe Azu. So if you can be in a position where you have one loaded and you can beat them to the second.
I was doing a practice battle against PvP Steve a few nights ago, and Steve got really unlucky because he had two psychic types in his line, and with Froslass, I just went straight Shadow Ball, and I nuked both of them.
Oh my gosh.
He didn't shield, he was expecting the bait, but what's funny about our battle, and you can check it out on his channel as well, I'll leave a link down there if you guys want to watch it, but what's funny about it is that after I nuked two of his Pokemon, I discovered that I was out of shields, and my Froslass went down, and then his Froslass came out in the back, and it just devastated anything else that I had, because I had zero shields.
Oh my gosh.
Just like you were saying, it's like the Battle of Froslass. I couldn't do anything.
Oh man, that's kind of hilarious.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you guys, Matt, I know you mentioned a pretty prominent line early on. I believe it was Psychic or Confusion User, Dark, and Fighter. Was that correct?
Correct.
Awesome. In terms of team building, do you guys have any Pokemon that are really standing out for you right now that maybe you want to build a team around? I know we mentioned both Alolan and Froslass. What are some good complements to those? And is there anything else that you found that is actually really good?
I think Azu hits a lot of the meta. A lot of people aren't prepared for it. And then Bronzong is very good here. And you were talking earlier about Skuntank. Just basically as a multi-check, I like Skuntank for its ability to check the Psychics and Azu. I feel like it could make a safe swap, maybe not as good as a Alolan, but possibly you could run both with something else as the lead. For Skuntank, Poison Jab, Crunch, and Sludge Bomb. Yeah, it's interesting because there just isn't a whole lot. I don't want to run Tentacruel, and I don't want to have Alolan as my only dark. Skuntank is a little better with Azu. Another interesting Pokemon is Munchlax, but I shouldn't talk about all the Pokemon. I just named like all of my team except for one.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about Linoon. I think Linoon has a lot of play here across the board. It's really highly ranked on PvPoke, but I mean, the core of like Hypno and Azu is going to be really common, and then like handling Froslass too is super nice. And it can hit really everything with neutral damage when you take into account like Thunder can pretty much hit everything, and then anything that resists that you can hit with Grass Knot. So I think it's very well rounded and has a lot of flexibility as like a safe swap or even like as a lead. I think it can do a lot of jobs.
I really like Noctowl. I think Noctowl's nice and tanky, and its Sky Attack also goes pretty unresisted across the board, and it just is. I mean, I just feel like it can pull out some matches for you with its tankiness, and you kind of sit there like, how did I win that? And it really just comes
wins the one with Azu.
Exactly. Nice. Yeah. So that's really nice, and
yep.
It can tank. I think every move in the meta. I don't think there's any move that can one shot it too. So
maybe Avalanche
also beats Noctowl. Linoon also beats Noctowl if you have to beat.
Yeah, with a Thunder, right?
Yeah.
So
doesn't Noctowl beat Munchlax too, which is really nice?
It beats all the Lick Boys.
I'm sure that it beats Munchlax. It's got to.
It beats all the Lick Boys pretty hard.
Yeah,
because it double resists Lick, and Munchlax is forced then to go Body Slam spam since Bulldoze is also double resisted.
Noctowl is going to carry about 131 HP on average, and that Avalanche is going to take 118. So if you just come out in a fresh matchup, you can still survive it.
Yeah, so it'll still hurt for sure, but I mean, again, you'll survive, and there's a scenario where that'll.
And you want Nightshade, right, for the Zong and.
Yeah, Yeah, I think the only time
Pretty
Nightshade
much just for Zong. Yeah.
yeah, is ever better is against Zong.
Or like Solrock or Lunatone.
As in terms of the meta, I always try to look for what a lot of people call meta breakers, things that can come in and just do a lot of different coverage, can fill a lot of different roles. Things like Skunktank's Flamethrower, I think, is really intriguing because it helps you against ice types in case Alolan Sandslash becomes more popular, or maybe even Froslass. Although the crunch does help you a lot in those matchups as well. That's why Skuntank doesn't really make the cut for me as a meta breaker. But some other things like Toxicroak looks damn good on paper. I mean, the counter is going to beat the normal types. It even beats up the steel types like Alolan Sandslash. Mud Bomb can just destroy the poison types, and then Sludge Bomb will beat all the fairies. Of course, you have to dodge the Charmers and Confusion users, but Toxicroak seems really good. Are there any other meta breakers, or do you have any thoughts on maybe building a team around Toxicroak where he's not going to get instantly zapped by Confusion and you're just going to fall right back into that RPS trap again?
I think Golbat is an interesting meta breaking pick, and yes, I do think that it's important not to be afraid of using Toxicroak. Just because Confusion exists doesn't mean that you shouldn't use it. I've actually thought a lot about Alolan Raticate. Not sure yet, but I've played with it and it's definitely fun. It does its job well. It's a little scary, but maybe with a second backup.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the pair of AMuk and Toxicroak. I feel like they do a good job kind of covering each other for the most part pretty well. Just because, again, Muk can fight off a lot of the confusion. Bronzong's bulldoze, maybe you got to worry about a little. A nice meta breaker I like so far in practice has been Qwilfish. It's a little hard to build a team around. The water gun damage is really nice, and then the mind games that come with Qwilfish's charge moves is nice because I think it has really a variety of things that you could want. I think it's Aquatail as the water charge move, Fell Stinger in case you want to boost your attack, Acid Spray if you want to debuff your opponent's defense. Or maybe it's Ice Beam. Yeah, you're right. Ice Beam. And then
Sludge Wave.
I think we just named 3 poison types, so I'm going to go ahead and name Bronzong, because Bronzong, it's not going to beat like Alolan Muk, even if it has an energy advantage. It's not going to beat Alolan Muk to like the second bulldoze, like it's going to lose, but it definitely has the ability to get shields, and I think Confusion is very important in this meta, and so is Steel because of what we were talking about earlier. With the charm users, but yeah, he just kept saying poison, and I'm like, just kept thinking Bronzong, oh, Bronzong again.
I think the Licky family can be huge, though. I mean, they like beat Muk. They beat the Hypno. They beat the Froslass. Even like Azu, you get with Lickitung, and then like they both beat Zong. So I mean, when you talk about meta breakers, those Licky boys are pretty annoying. I imagine they're probably not the easiest to build a team around.
One Pokemon that has intriguing role compression on paper. It's like a very specific role player and has to be played for support. And it also depends on meta to see how many players are going to run Ice Punch. But if you're having trouble with Azu, but still want a Confusion user that beats both fighters, Exeggutor offers some nice role compression in that regard.
Yeah, I was talking about that earlier. It's going to be walled against a few things, but Exeggutor is nice. It's interesting, although it doesn't, unless you land the Solar Beam, I believe Azu still wins if it has Ice Beam.
Yeah. Let me check that out. That's actually a really good question. You can't just straight Seed Bomb, can you?
No, I don't think it's a hard enough move. I was just talking about this earlier with Start.
But it is for the play rough, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
For the play rough, it's just straight Seed Bomb.
With the Ice Beam Hydro Pump variant, your Exeggutor is going to go in the 0 shields, battle rating at 350, in the 1 shield 467, so you almost force a tie, and then in the 2 shields you go 699. I think that's just straight Seed Bomb. Why is grass so hard in this cup? It's just so, oh man. I mean, there's not a lot of. There's only a couple of water types. You got your Azumarill,
poison.
your Tentacruel. Oh yeah, the poison's everywhere.
Well, I'm just saying because that's the only grass you can have, really. That's why If we were able to have Meganium, we'd have a lot of options. It's just like the Earthquake. We don't have that. So
let me ask you guys this. We've already determined that grass is pretty hard to run, but I know a lot of trainers value a lot of different strategies. For example, when I was talking to Elisa Noble about her Toxic Cup, she rarely brought Meganium at all, but she kept it on her team to kind of keep the water types away. So could you see a scenario where you bring maybe 5 core Pokemon that you're going to play with 98% of your matches, and then maybe just add a Razor Leafer just to make other trainers leave their water types at home?
Absolutely.
The bench
Everybody
pressure
hates
is there,
Victor
but I wouldn't necessarily recommend a Razor Leaf user for your grass Pokemon. A lot of the Razor Leaf users beyond Azu and Froslass struggle to find additional coverage. You have some like Weavile can take out some of the normals, and I know it gets farmed down by confusion users, but the old reliable Venusaur is still probably your best option. It beats the entire Licklicky family. It beats all the Lick boys. It beats Whitenoon. It beats Azu. It beats Tentacruel. So it can be your Tentacruel check. It beats the Charmers, and it has a better relationship with Froslass than you would expect. Because Froslass is supposed to switch into Venusaur because they both get the Frenzy Plant and an Avalanche at the same time, and Froslass only beats Venusaur because of CMP. And so Venusaur with an energy advantage beats Froslass.
Bronzong isn't even actually an amazing switch into a Venusaur with energy, unless it's like a very high rate Bronzong. We were just talking about this. There's like some crazy scenarios that the Venusaur can even beat it. Just
with energy, right?
Yeah, with energy.
Frenzy Plant is just so oppressive.
Yeah.
It just slaps hard. Even when resisted, it slaps hard.
And that could even alter your game plan as well. If you've got a Venusaur on your team, you can expect your opponent to bring their Confusion users to bring their Froslass and their other Ice types as well. So it could help you game plan in the long run.
Sure, I'm almost going to just dare my opponent to use it because my team's going to be built that way where it's like you're not going to want to bring it. Even if you do want to beat the Azu, there's going to be 4 counters. It's tough. This meta is really difficult to team build and try your best, but sometimes you just can't get everything that you want.
In terms of early Sorcerous Cup strategies, I know there have been some practice cups that went up as last month was ending, and then some flash tournaments have already gone down. Is there any kind of strategy that you've seen or that you've used personally that you found is really useful? Maybe a double dark, double poison, if you can trap your opponent's flyer, anything like that that's really stood out to you so far?
Yeah, with double dark, I've seen people run a Charmer lead and then run Skunk, Safe Swap, and AMuk in the back. So basically the idea is if you don't catch the fighter in up front, you switch in the Safe Swap, you bring out the fighter, and then you basically take it out with the Charmer, and then you have the Muck in back to sweep up. So I've seen that being successful. I know we've talked already here about maybe multiple Charmers being a factor too. But I definitely think Double Dark has some serious play.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, both Skunk Tank and AMuk, their counters are kind of limited. To bring both, or to bring 2 counters for AMuk and Skunk Tank in a single battle is kind of a tough proposition to do for an opponent. It's kind of interesting as an attack. I mean, it could fail miserably if you're perfectly countered, but if not, energy with those 2 Pokemon as well can be very dangerous. So that's a good play.
Hypno lead too.
In terms of spice picks, do you have anything that's standing out to you that's maybe a little bit lower ranked, but actually has a lot of utility? For example, I'm really intrigued by the idea of Weavile. It operates a lot like a Froslass, but it does have that fighting type weakness being dark and ice. So just like with Toxicroak avoiding your confusion users, you would not want to get Weavile paired against a fighter. However, its moveset with Foul Play and Avalanche is actually really, really effective, and it devastates whatever it hits. Are there any spice picks that you've seen maybe below 30 or 40 or 50?
I'm not sure what it's ranked at all, but Sealeo, unless you run into a Bronzong, or if it's got some energy, it can destroy. I'm really in love with, I think it's the fastest body slam in the game.
I spoke about mine earlier, but again, Qwilfish seems really nice as a overall Pokemon. Like we were saying, grass isn't too common in this meta, and Qwilfish can beat things like Asmorel, the Charmers, Skunk Tank, and I believe it even will beat BEEDRILL when BEEDRILL gets its Community Day move. So again, it just does some nice consistent damage with Water Gun. And then again, the charge moves have such variety. So for that reason, I think it's interesting. It does have the confusion weakness or psychic weakness, which can be a little difficult sometimes to work around. But
If you're looking for a deep sleeper, like something like Gothitelle could be really good. Like it beats the fighters, it beats Azu, it beats Noctowl, like Tentacruel, it just confusions, and then you have a bunch of energy. And like it beats Noctowl because it gets Rock Slide, and like as a confusion user, that's really unique as well. So
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, Gothitelle? It's the evolved form of Gothita. It's a Gen 5.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like Muck obviously beats it hard, but you can still hit things that come in with Rock Slide and still chunk away, so.
Because the Silph Arena decided not to allow the Galar Pokemon into the Sorcerous Cup, there isn't a whole lot of that we really have to say on the topic. I do want to say, though, that the Galar Pokemon seem to be really, really solid in Open Great League, and it is, again, a little bit unfortunate that Go Battle League has already moved on to the Ultra League, so we aren't going to get to test our Galarian Stunfisk yet, but it is a top contender in the Great League meta. In terms of the Ultra League, Obstagoon is looking really good. I think B has posted a video where he was just destroying people with it. It looks like a really good contender, but it's unfortunate we don't get to talk more about Galar Pokemon, but I do want to kind of close out with a little thought about the Silph Arena's Continentals, and then as the season concludes. We talked about it a little bit before the call, and the constant remote tournaments is not what we're used to. We're used to that community interaction. We're used to seeing everybody. We're used to kind of getting together and having fun moments alongside of the battles, and it has been kind of a challenging time for a lot of trainers. And I don't think a lot of people realize it until they really just sit down and think about it. And they, when you play these remote tournaments, you put a lot of pressure on yourself, and it feels like it's really challenging. And when you lose, there's nobody there to pick you up. So it has been kind of a weird season because of the pandemic. But the Continentals invites just went out, and I have kind of mixed feelings on it. I really wish that we could all be together for it and we could, see each other and compete in person. But do you guys have any feelings, any kind of thoughts on Continentals? Are you excited? Are you kind of looking forward to it? Or are you kind of maybe on the fence like I am?
In reading the announcement that came out today, I think it's a really interesting and a good attempt by Silph to be able to try and make it still feel like how it did last year. There's the play-in tournaments where I believe you have to put in a request for a raffle to compete in your continent play-in type tournaments, which is kind of like the open qualifiers that we had on. But again, like you just said, it's a different feeling. Not I think and not just for Worlds, but I think for all tournaments, I think a lot of people are missing the in-person interaction. It kind of goes along with quarantine. It was interesting at first, maybe nice to work from home for a little, but I think a lot of people are craving that daily interaction with different people and their friends. So again, I hope that comes back, because that is definitely one of the things that differentiates Silph from Go Battle League. Go Battle League, you just kind of get in and play by yourself, but Silph is definitely a community, and so I'm looking forward to it. But again, you got to commend the folks at Silph for finding a way to make it work, because there is so much uncertainty and everything keeps changing. To put the season on hold would have been a bad decision, and I think that would have been the only other alternative. It's important to recognize that they did a good job and I think made the right choice.
Yeah, as a build on that, to look at just on the other side of the house on the VGC for the video game championships, this is the official doubles format for the mainline games. They end up canceling not just their internationals, which is their equivalent of continentals, but their worlds, and they ended up just in the governing body there, the Pokemon Company International had to develop an alternative called the Players Cup on the fly, and there's been some dissatisfaction there, as the entire Asia Pacific region, it looks like, was excluded from it, and weirdly Quebec as well. Not all of Canada, just Quebec. And so to see still be able to adapt and still have their continentals and move forward with worlds is a nice adaptation to keep things going. I do hope that as in-person Galarians are allowed again, that Silph does put greater caps and restrictions on remote tournaments once that is allowed, because one thing I found as a local TO, and Lennon, you can comment on this as well, is that it feels like there's been a lot more centralization of tournaments at Go Stadium and Pogo Coliseum for those 6-7 round tournaments, with even local players skipping out on local cups.
Kind of not to make this the topic of it, but I'd put the plea out there to all the players that are still committed to playing in the Silph Arena to make sure to support your TOs. I have a lot of friends that are TOs across the country, and they've expressed, they are sad to see kind of their numbers go down a little bit, because everyone they put it on for their friends. All the trainers and battlers and girls at PvP, they put it on for you guys. And so to see the numbers dwindle as we're kind of doing this all remote, Eventually, we will be having in-person tournaments again soon. Only chasing the big tournaments, recognize that your local community will be there, just like they were at the start. Will be there at the end. So again, I put the plea out there to support your local tournaments.
Yeah, I think they made the best of a bad situation with like Continentals and whatnot. So I'm glad it's still going and moving forward. And hopefully the playing tournaments are just as good as last year in Chicago. But it's gonna be hard to duplicate that. You know, they're doing the best they can, and I do agree. Like just seeing some of the local numbers from some of my tournaments just like falling to where it's sometimes hard to get 8-9 people for just one ranked tournament. It's really tough, and hopefully they can do something about that before season 3 next season. I do wonder too if we're gonna see a delay in the next season until we can do like face-to-face tournaments. It'll be interesting to see. Should we talk about BEEDRILL more? I mean, in terms of the community day moveset coming, or is that something that you'd want to do later in the month?
We could.
Later.
I mean, I think it feels like different roles based on the moveset. I ran the Sims, and I think it only picks up maybe 1 or 2 additional wins with the drill run, but I think it fills a very different role for your team because you're giving up that sludge bomb in order for a anti-tank killer.
Still beats Azzy though.
Still beats Azzy. That's so crazy. I mean, if you have any...
It just keeps the poison types harder, right? With
Correct.
It's just poison jab, cell stinger, straight. Beats Azzy, right?
Wow. Because you turn the poison jabs into like a razor leaf, but poison-wise. Gotcha.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's wild.
I think like BEEDRILL could be interesting as like an anti-charmer too, and like it also beats Munchlax, which is pretty crazy. It beats Munchlax with Poison Jab, X Scissor, Sludge Bomb. I mean, it gets 91 wins versus the meta. I mean, 43 losses. Pretty darn good.
Yeah, I have a rank 90, but it's already evolved. This was way back before the community day voting.
Yeah, I have a freaking rank 1, but it's evolved.
Oh, well,
you know what you
have to do. Elite TM.
I know, right?
Oh man.
Well, I think we pretty much covered everything. Again, just trying to be respectful to you guys' time. Thank you so much for rescheduling and then waiting and then coming on and just really crushing it. I really enjoyed this one.